There has been a lot of reaction to the new 3D scan of the Titanic wreckage, including from those of you at home. The digital scans reveal new insights into what likely happened on board the ship in its final moments. A new view of the boiler room suggests they were still operating as they went under. And a detailed simulation shows the damage it incurred when it hit an iceberg, indicating it didn't create massive gashes, but a series of small punctures. Well, our next guest was watching our program last night, but for her, the story resurfaced some difficult memories. Her grandfather was a second-class salon steward on the Titanic. Valerie Gibson joins us now from Toronto. Valerie, what was your reaction when you were watching and you saw these new 3D images of the Titanic?
Well, quite frankly, it's painful because it's 113 years ago. On April the 15th when it went down. And it was a huge tragedy, of course. But a lot of people are totally unknown to them that the majority of the people who died on there, the souls that died on there, were the crew. Many of the rich people, the first class, were saved, but the crew, I think 6 survived out of, I think, 900. It just was the way of the world that they were there, handpicked by Cunard, and they were there to serve, as they said in those days, they called them their betters, and that was their job, and that's what they did. My grandfather was never found.
Yeah, so your grandfather, one of the crew members. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he was picked to be, they were always well dressed and picked to be among the best. Second class, first class, of course, was the best, but he was there. He was married with 3 small children, and he was so thrilled to be on the Titanic. This was a real up-and-coming ship, the biggest and most luxurious, and the people who were picked were very carefully picked, and so he was thrilled. And it was the maiden voyage, of course, from Southampton. And this is where the crew mostly came from, was Southampton. And when they all died nearly, whole streets of Southampton lost their men. The wives lost their men. It was a total and awful disaster for the city and particularly for the women who were destitute practically without a male in their life. It was the way of the world in 1912. That a male was necessary for a woman to survive. And that lasted, as everyone knows, quite a long time. But there was nothing for them. There was nothing, no jobs, nothing for women.
I'm curious, given your personal connection and clearly emotional connection to the sinking and the death of your grandfather, could you ever bring yourself to watch the Titanic movie? Did you ever see it?
Yes, I did. I couldn't not go and see it, but I'm afraid I cried all the way through. It was, you see, as far as I see it, and I don't know how many of us are left now, but as I see it, this is my grandfather's grave. It was his graveyard. And I really, and I'm sure other people feel perhaps the same, I don't know, but you don't plunder a graveyard in such a short time as has been done. And I was hoping that would die off, the plundering. I think it has a bit, but it was very painful to see pictures of items from the Titanic and thinking, oh, did it belong to my grandfather? Because we never received any of his possessions, and of course his body was never found, all brought in by the Halifax boats that went out to pick up bodies and people that survived, which they didn't in the water. It was extremely freezing, and most died that went into the water. But it was something that we had nothing, and it affected my grandmother extraordinarily heavily, and my mother, who was 6 at the time, and would never speak of the Titanic her whole life.
Yeah, we have just half a minute left, but let me just ask you, so many people around the world have this compulsion to find out more about the Titanic. Some are willing to risk their lives to see the wreckage. What's your message to them?
Please leave it alone. I really would hope it's crumbling now. It is a grave site. I don't think people see it as that. But for those who lost people, if there's any many left now, I guess, but still, it is a graveyard. And it is unfortunate, I think, particularly the last descent where it blew up and killed everybody. I tend to think, oh dear, Titanic took its victims again. But it is, I think it will one day just have disappeared into the sea totally. And I think that's the best thing that could happen to such a terrible tragedy for the world, not just for Southampton, for the world and the people that died on it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you reaching out. I think it's an important reminder, not just that there's a Canadian connection, but that this is a story about people and about victims. And thank you for telling us, Valerie.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ian.
Valerie Gibson's grandfather, one of the victims of the Titanic sinking.